Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Financial Armor Show. My name is Brad Cooper, the host and president of Cooper Financial Investments. And I want to welcome, as always, my wonderful, amazing co-host, Tony Shore. How are you doing today, Tony?
I'm doing great, Brad. Great to be here
Awesome.
with you as always. I always enjoy chatting with you each week. Before the
Yes.
show, we cover a lot of topics. I know you've been dealing with a lot on your end and you're always busy. And I'm up here in Minnesota right now, Minnesota, where there's no snow and the sun is shining, and we hit 70 last week. So it's crazy.
And then probably tomorrow's going to be snow and 10 below zero.
It's going to get dipped back into the 20s this week. So from
Wow.
70 to 20, that's quite a weather spread right there, right? The temperature difference.
And every time I meet a snowbird, Tony, I just remind them of how brilliant they are. And I always question the mentality of people, why they would want to live in a climate in the wintertime when it's 50 below zero and snowing.
I've asked myself that question my entire life.
But
Uh,
you would probably ask me, Brad, who in their right mind would live in sunny Arizona in July and August when it's 150 degrees?
yeah. Yeah, those are tough months. August, beginning of end of July, beginning of August. That's a tough one in your neck of the woods. But you're living in God's country. I mean, I love
You're right.
Arizona. You know, I love spending time there. So that's great. But today we have quite a topic for our listeners. What are we talking about?
Yeah, today, Tony, we're going to be talking about preparing for RMDs. What's an RMD? It's a required minimum distribution. And we talked
Wait,
about
stop,
RMDs.
stop, stop.
Yes.
RMD stands for required minimum distribution.
Yes.
I always thought it stood for really massive donut.
Now you're thinking right. But once you pay the taxes on a required minimum distribution, it will give you a stomach ache like eating too many donuts.
That's true. Like two really massive donuts, right?
Oh,
RMDs,
now you're
really
making me
massive
hungry.
donut. Yeah,
Oh,
I always do that. I always have to why do I always relate everything to food, Brad? I'm just trying to keep it light. But okay, so a required minimum distribution. Tell us about this.
yeah, we've talked about RMDs in the past, Tony, but and we're going to talk about more specifics today from a U.S. News and World Report article I read. But you know, just as a quick overview, an RMD, required minimum distribution. Most of you probably are aware of this. If you're listening, is it's a requirement that at 73 that you will have to start taking a portion of your IRA, 401k, any pre-tax account you have, whether you want the money or not. Why is that? Because the IRS wants your taxes. And we're going to talk about, the consequences. It could be good in a way for a lot of our clients, but also it could be a big tax burden as well in the future if you don't prepare properly in advance.
Yeah, I would assume it could push you into a higher tax bracket for some.
That's right. And I'll never forget, I've been in this industry for over 30 years, and 20, 30 years ago, for that period of time, if not a little bit longer, we always recommended put all your money in IRAs, put all your money in 401ks, put it all pre-tax, because you're going to save taxes now. Because in the future, when you retire, Tony, you won't have to worry about paying taxes. You're going to be in a much lower tax bracket and taxes won't be an issue. Well, that's a question I ask at every speaking engagement with all the people in the room that are retired. And not one says, Brad, that was right. We're all paying too much in taxes. And what's scary about that is if you look at our federal tax brackets and the percentages of where taxes are currently, we are at about a 75 to 100-year low. So not in your lifetime
Wow.
nor mine, Tony's, have we seen taxes as low as they are. However, come January 1st to 2026, we're going to start seeing an increase of federal income taxes and other taxes.
if not before, if they don't make a change
Well, you're
before.
right, and
Yeah,
anything can change before. One of the risks that we've talked about on the show, which a lot of people never heard of, is legislative risk. What's legislative risk? Every 2 years, November, what happens? We have an election.
that's
This
right.
coming November, it's a big election, a presidential election, but
Sure.
depending on the outcome, who gets elected, that could impact your retirement. And in a big way, especially if a certain party decides to increase your taxes, it's going to impact your retirement. And
Sure.
don't for once, since we're on the topic of taxes, which that's kind of a theme, it seems like, of, when you're talking about RMDs, don't think for once that if you're a proud middle class American, which we both are, that we're going to be exempt or not have to pay the taxes because the rich are going to have to pay all the taxes. It doesn't work that way. Historically, if you look back in our great United States of America and the foundation, really it's been the middle class who've paid the brunt of the
Yeah,
majority of taxes.
they bear the brunt of the burden,
Um,
is the middle class for the most part. And so that's tough. And that's why you want to minimize your tax burden. And that's why we're talking about RMDs today. Now, you said RMDs, people might not be familiar with them. You gave us a quick description of what they were. And then in 2023, the Secure Act increased the age. It used to be 72, right? Or
it
70 and a
was
half.
Yeah, 70 and a half, then it increased it to 73. And then as the Secure Act, the most recent CARES Act 2.0 that passed last year, in the year 2033, it is supposed to increase to 75. But most of our
Wow.
tax experts do not believe that's going to happen. If anything, probably it's going to be lowered. Why would it be lowered? Because that would force more retirees, more Americans to start taking money out of their IRAs, 401ks, and more taxes would be fed into our system to help pay the national deficit, for an example, which is
Which
now
is
outrageous, 34
ask
trillion plus.
Yeah, it's not even a number you can wrap your head around. It's so
Not at
big,
all.
and it goes up exponentially every second. Not It doesn't compound by year, month, or even day, or even minute, but by
Right.
every second, it's going up exponentially. So,
Yeah.
but hey, all this could be solved if Congress cuts spending.
Yes. So what's the chance of that happening? Like my mentor said many years ago, slim to none and slim
Slim to
left
none,
town
and
and
slim
slim
left
left.
down.
So, so I'm okay. And I let, all of our clients and friends, and when I'm speaking, I'm okay with paying taxes.
Oh
But what
yeah,
I'm not okay is overpaying just
right.
because we don't know the rules. And I was reminded, I was at Mayo Clinic the other day, Tony, going through some testing and just praying that I'm a good candidate to give one of my kidneys to my wife. And as I was talking to the specialist and all the wonderful people at Mayo Clinic, which I now truly understand why they're the number one healthcare provider in the world, and people from all over the world come into Mayo Clinic, especially in Minnesota,
Yes.
Arizona, and other states. I realized you don't know what you don't know. And what questions they were asking me. And I finally said, you know what? I'm very good at what I do, in the financial arena. But when it comes to healthcare, sometimes I just don't know what I don't know. And I don't
Right.
know what to ask. And,
Right.
um, and that's kind of what I shared with them. So if you were in my situation, what would you want to know that maybe I don't know? Don't assume that, you know, I know everything when it comes to healthcare and all my options. And we do likewise with our clients. That's why we take a very proactive educational approach when it comes to planning, and especially when it comes to RMDs and tax planning. The article, Tony, that I read just this past week, U.S. News and World Report article, required minimum distributions for retirement are supersized in 2024. Here's what seniors need to know. So I took several bullet points from this article, which are very valuable, and some may be an overlap of what we talked about. But,
Sure.
the first is higher returns on your investments are nothing to be concerned about. But capital BUT, but could lead to a surprising financial consequence for older Americans because RMDs from retirement accounts, which begin at age 73, and how are those calculated? We're in 2024 currently. So whatever your account balance was December 31st of 2023, that's what they calculate your required minimum distribution to be for 2024. So if the market continues to go up, that's a good thing, right? You're making money. But also at the same time, your pre-taxed IRA money, 401k money is growing. So that could continuously impact and increase your required minimum distribution you have to take on an annual basis.
Yeah, under the deferred tax accounts, right? That's what we're
Right.
talking about, like traditional IRA and 401ks. The problem with the traditional retirement accounts, most Americans have them, like a 401k or an IRA, but the problem is all that money has to be taxed when it comes out, then the gain and the principal, right?
100%. It's
Yeah.
taxed as ordinary income, Tony. So
So,
here's what's happening, which I'm seeing on a daily basis. And this is why I'm so passionate. And we have the best of the best tax experts on our team that can help with advice, more so in detail. But here's what we're seeing on a daily basis. You get up to age 73 and your money that you have saved the last 30 or 40 years in 401ks, IRAs, maybe 403bs, any pre-taxed account has grown to maybe a million, 2 million, 3 million. That's good, right? But the problem with that is several problems. Number one, if you have $2 million of IRA money, you have a partner,
yeah.
and your partner is the IRS. And the IRS can change the rules of your partnership and decide what portion you have to pay taxes on, more so than what they're going to have to, allow you to be able to keep. That's the problem, number one. Number two, you get to 73 and you wake up and say, wow, I forgot about my RMD. You call your financial planner and they tell you your RMD is $75,000. Now, that $75,000, like you said, Tony, all of that's taxable. Now, that's going to be
Yeah.
added to your Social Security. That's going to be added to your pension if you have a pension,
Yeah.
added to any other income, rental income, or ordinary
And which
dividends,
is all
whatever.
taxable, and then that could bump you up into a higher tax bracket.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing right now, which thank God taxes are at an all time low. But when
Yeah.
that changes, the rules change and a bigger portion is going
Yeah.
to go to the IRS.
I'm glad you said that, Brad, because I don't think a lot of people realize that or think about the fact that, hey, I've got 100,000. I'm just using this as a number. Hopefully people will have more by the time they're in
Right.
retirement. But let's say I've got $100,000 in a traditional IRA, right?
Right.
And I'm 73. I think, wow, I've got this $100,000 I can spend, or I've got access to $100,000. I don't, right? Because it's
Right.
not all mine. It's a joint account. People don't understand these
That's
tax
right.
deferred accounts are joint accounts with Uncle Sam. Number one problem there, Brad, that I see is he's not even my real uncle, first of all. And so he's got what, 25-30% is just going to go out the door to Uncle Sam.
Right.
I don't have $100,000. I might have $80,000.
Right. And not only that, what happens when taxes go up to maybe 40 or
Right.
50% or 60? And they've been there before. And that's one of the things that we do go through thoroughly. When you come into our office and visit with us, we'll show you historical tax rates. And we are at an all-time low. And if you think taxes are not going to increase, look at what's going on in our world today. And that will, in my opinion, that will be one of the biggest, detriments to retirees today and future retirees going into retirement, is future taxation and increases as well. So a lot of people say, well, Brad, yes, I'm turning 73, in June of 2024. What's the rules? When do I have to take my first
Right.
RMD? And I know there used to be a lot of confusion with this, especially when the required minimum distribution age was 70 and a half. But now, since it's 73, let's say that you turn 73 this year. You have a choice. You can take a required minimum distribution this year, or the IRS will allow you to wait and take one before April 1st of the following year. So that may sound like a good thing, but let's say, well, Brad, I'm just going to defer another year. I'm going to take my first RMD next year in March of 2025. But hold on, if you do that, you will have to take another required minimum distribution before December 31st of 2025. So you'll be forced to take two in a given calendar year. And that may be in your best interest, depending on if you're retired or where your income is. In most cases, we're finding out it could be a larger tax burden for the average retiree.
Sure, you could put you in a higher tax bracket. I see what you're saying. If you delay that first one until the following year, which they'll let you do, take it earlier the following year, but then you have to pay taxes on it for that year, and you have to take another one by the end of the year. So you're having to take two distributions, is what you're saying, and pay tax on both.
Absolutely.
So you really should spread it out. I mean, just in theory, then, let me know what you think of this. And I don't know if this is something you've ever had clients do or talk to about, your clients about doing, but does it make sense to spread out withdrawals then from an IRA, like leading up to, so you don't have all these tax burdens in these later years? Or is it worth it to let it grow? I mean, everybody's situation is different, I would imagine, as to how much they have then.
Absolutely. I'll give you the answer that my CPA and my attorney would give me. It depends.
Yeah, I love that. It does depend, doesn't it?
But let me tell you, overall, with the majority of our clients, not 100%, but I would say probably 75 to 80% of our clients, what we are doing, especially if they're in their 50s, 60s, if they're earlier than age 73, we're being very proactive. I just had a conversation a few days ago with another advisor friend from Oklahoma, and we were talking about the same subject. He said, Brad, I have a client that has $1.5 million, 68 years old. What would you recommend for this client? And so what we're doing in most cases is we're being very proactive. We're working with our CPA team, or if they have a good CPA, we'll work with your CPA, and we'll put together a strategy and a plan to maybe 5-6 years in advance, a little bit each year. Strategically, we're going to start shifting from taxable, like IRAs, to tax-free, Roth IRAs and other tax-free strategies that
like a Roth IRA, cash value life insurance, things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the question I get, well, Brad, this sounds great. Well, I have to pay taxes when we do that. Absolutely. But my question is, would you rather pay taxes now while tax rates are at a 75 to 100-year low, or wait 5, 10, 15 years when we know taxes will most likely be much higher? So we're being very proactive, not only with Roth conversions and using life insurance also as a tax-free account, but also another discussion I had earlier last week was this client, or this new person, which now is soon to be a client, was 71 years of age. And we were talking about RMDs and tax planning. And one of the questions, because they were sitting on 1.2 million of IRA money, one of the questions I asked them, Tony, is, do you give to your church? Do you give to a nonprofit on an annual basis? And they looked at me and they said, yes, absolutely. We're giving about $15,000 a year to our church and other charities. I said, wow. So my next question was, how are you paying that? And they looked at me funny. They said, well, we're writing a check.
Ooh.
I said,
mistake.
Big mistake.
Yeah.
What you can do is take the money directly from your IRA and we can send it to your charity or church of choice, nonprofit, and that would be treated as a qualified charitable distribution or a qualified charitable contribution. And the IRS will allow you to do that up to $100,000 every calendar year. Every penny that comes out of your IRA and goes to a nonprofit is tax-free.
Yeah. It's really the only way to get money out of a tax-deferred account like an IRA without paying taxes on it is to have it charitably donated to a qualifying charity, which or nonprofit like a church or some type of charity, and do the QCD, the qualified charitable distribution, correct?
Absolutely. I just saw an advertisement online and I think maybe on TV too. And it got my attention. Would you like to know a way of not ever paying taxes on your required minimum distributions? Well, we just talked about that.
Yeah.
And what's sad, Tony, and I get so angry and aggravated at my industry, at CPAs as well. This is a discussion that's not taking place with the majority of Americans, because every time we speak to a group of people, whether there's 30, 50, or 100 people in attendance, I ask this question, how many people are familiar with what we just talked about? Charitable distributions. And at the very most, Tony, I normally get 2 or 3 people that raise their hands, and the rest is just a blank face.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom and dad, when they both turned 70 and a half, it's just a couple of years apart, right?
Right.
They had to start taking RMDs at 70 and a half, my parents,
Right.
because of their age. But they're very avid churchgoers, and they give 15% of
Great.
all their income or what they have to their church, and they're writing checks, and no one ever told them.
Wow.
Their financial person at the time never told them that they could just take that RMD and give it to the church, or a portion of it and give it to the church each year, and then they wouldn't have to pay taxes on that money. But instead, they take the RMDs, they pay all the taxes on it, then
Wow.
they cut a check out of their account to the church, and they could have that money transferred directly from their IRA to the church or to a charity and not pay taxes on it. So that is important. But some people might be sitting out there, well, I don't have the money, I need my RMD.
Right.
That's fine. There are other things you can do. Like you said, well, taxes are low, get it into a Roth so it can come out tax free, right?
That's right. And
Yeah.
about 67% of our clients, Tony, in the next 5 to 6 years will get to experience a 0% tax bracket for the rest of their life. How is that? They're receiving Social Security. They're not receiving any other income. And after we convert their IRA money to tax-free accounts, Roth IRAs and other accounts, any money they pull out once it's converted and they add to their Social Security will be tax-free. And they'll get to enjoy a 0% tax bracket and paying no taxes for the rest of their life. And then one other thing I'll add to that, because you mentioned the Secure Act that passed, really 2 versions, January 1st of 2020, and then the last January 1st of 2023. Now they get to pass on a legacy once they pass away, tax-free. And their beneficiaries, their children, their grandchildren will not be forced to liquidate and cash in their IRAs in a 10-year period, because that was one of the major changes of the Secure Act.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. Now, the one other thing really quick we need to touch
Yes.
on before we go regarding RMDs are penalties. So what if you miss an RMD? And I know the Secure Act 2.0 changed the penalty for this, right?
That's correct. It used to be 50%. So if you missed an
Wow.
RMD, and let's say your RMD was $30,000,
Yeah.
you could be taxed and penalized, that is, before the Secure Act, 50%. So that's a $15,000 penalty. Then you're still being taxed on the entire 30,000
Still
in
have
this
to pay the
example.
taxes.
So I
Wow.
think I used to have a breakdown slide of this where you get to keep 15%, and at the end of the day, the IRS gets to keep 85% by missing an RMD, which is very common. But with the Secure Act, it did bring the penalty down to 25%.
Oh, just 25% of my money they
Yes,
want. That's still the highest penalty in the tax code, isn't it? At
yes.
25%, yeah.
But then they go on to say, well, if you notice this and you correct it within the next 2 years, and here's the key wording, the IRS may, underline may, reduce your penalty to 10%. But
Wow.
even 10% of, 10, 20, $30,000, then you're taxed on top of that is very substantial.
Yes.
And just keep in mind, at the end of the day, the person responsible is you as a retiree, if you're 73 or older, of making sure you take your required minimum distribution. Now, at Cooper Financial, we take this very serious. We're very proactive. We're already addressing this now with our clients of making sure we fulfill that requirement of a required minimum
So your
distribution.
clients don't have to worry because they have you to help them and stay on
Right.
top of this for them, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
which is so important. And one other thing, since we're on RMDs and we're starting to run out of time, a question I get is, well, what is a required minimum distribution? What's it based on? It's based on your age, life expectancy, and as you get older, the percentage of what the IRS is going to require you to take out will increase. We have a very, very user-friendly chart that will break down the percentages at every age that we provide our clients to give you an idea and an expectation as we're doing tax planning.
Yeah. All right. Well, Brad, let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you to look at that breakdown and to ask any questions about RMDs, about IRAs, about minimizing that tax burden.
Absolutely, Tony. You can visit our website, which is financialarmorshow.com. Again, that's financialarmorshow.com. Ask any questions you have. Send us a message if you want a free consultation on our site, or you can do it the old-fashioned way, and we will pick up the phones Monday through Friday. You can call us directly at 520-543-8345. Again, that's 520-543-8345.
All right. And that does it for today's episode of the Financial Armor Show with our host, Brad Cooper.
Thank you, Tony. See you next week.